Dealership lots across America are stacked with more new trucks than they've held in over a decade, and buyers are walking straight past them. Curious Ford's F-Series, the best-selling vehicle in America for over 40 years, saw sales fall 3.1% in the last quarter of 2025. By February 2026, that number had collapsed to a drop of 16.2% year-over-year. Surprised, a self-employed electrician in Central Ohio had a new half-ton truck on order for 11 weeks. The week before delivery, he called the dealership and canceled. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the numbers stopped adding up for men just like him, and why the truck industry helped build the wall its own customers are now hitting. This isn't a story about people falling out of love with trucks. It's a story about the price of one finally catching up with what it can actually buy. Here's the scale of it. The average new vehicle in America now sells for $49,191. Not a loaded heavy-duty diesel, the average transaction across every brand, every trim. For a mid-tier crew cab half-ton, that number climbs well past $55,000 before a single option is added. B-roll note, close-up of a window sticker, camera pans down the price line. 1 in 5 new car shoppers in America today are now signing up for monthly payments of $1,000 or more. Not a luxury sedan, not a European import. A truck, financed like a second mortgage. The electrician in Ohio had run the numbers 3 times before he canceled. At the interest rate he'd been quoted, close to the national average of 6.5% for new vehicle loans, his monthly payment on a 72-month term would have landed at $942. That's before insurance, before fuel, before the tools he needed to put in the bed to actually earn a living with it. He decided the truck he already owned, 6 years old, paid off, still running, was worth more to him sitting in his driveway than a new one sitting on a loan. B-roll note, hands checking oil on an older work truck mid-repair. He is not an outlier. He is the new center of the market. And he's not alone in the brand he walked away from. Toyota's redesigned Tundra, a truck the company spent years and billions re-engineering, saw its own sales fall 7.5% in the final quarter of 2025 as buyers rejected both the new pricing and the added complexity of its twin-turbo engine. 2 different manufacturers, 2 different trucks, the same buyer resistance showing up in the same quarter. B-roll note, side-by-side stat card, F-Series and Tundra sales decline, Q4 2025. The system behind this isn't a conspiracy. It's simpler and in some ways more troubling than that. For 2 decades, American automakers made a structural decision: build bigger, build pricier, build the vehicles with the highest margin per unit. Trucks and SUVs became the profit engine of the entire industry, while smaller, cheaper vehicles were quietly discontinued one nameplate at a time. The last new car in America priced under $20,000 is now gone from the market completely. The under $25,000 category is shrinking behind it. B-roll note, split screen, a 2010s compact sedan lineup fading to a modern lineup dominated by trucks and SUVs. That strategy worked for a long time, as long as buyers could keep financing their way to the sticker price. Longer loans, lower down payments, rates that used to be reserved for people with weaker credit, now standard for everyone. But this is only the surface layer. To understand how a work truck came to cost as much as a house down payment, you have to go back to the decisions that stacked quietly, one on top of another. It starts with regulation. Federal fuel economy standards use a formula based on a vehicle's footprint, or its size. Larger vehicles get more lenient targets. Smaller vehicles get stricter ones. On paper, that sounds like an environmental rule. In practice, it became a financial incentive. Automakers realized something simple. The bigger the vehicle, the easier the compliance, and the higher the margin. B-roll note, animated graphic. Footprint-based CAFE formula, vehicle size versus required MPG target. 3 words. Bigger meant safer for the balance sheet. So automakers built bigger, then they built pricier on top of bigger. New trims, New tech packages, new safety suites layered onto every generation. Then came tariffs. On imported parts, on imported steel, on entire vehicle categories, raising the floor price of everything sold in the country, protecting domestic manufacturers from ever having to compete on affordability again. Each decision made sense in isolation. Stacked together, they built a truck market where the cheapest available half-ton now starts where the mid-tier trim used to sit 5 years ago. B-roll note. Timeline graphic. Base MSRP of a half-ton truck, year over year, 2015 to 2026. For a while, financing absorbed the gap. Buyers didn't need the price to come down. They just needed the loan to stretch further. 60 months became 72. 72 became 84. Today, over a third of new vehicle buyers are on loan terms of 6 years or longer. At the same time, the down payment, the buyer's own cushion against that debt, kept shrinking. Fewer dollars up front. More dollars borrowed. More years attached to that borrowing. It was a system built to keep the sale moving forward, not to keep the buyer financially whole by the time the loan ended. B-roll note. Graphic set. Average down payment trend line sloping downward against rising average transaction price. Dealers noticed the shift before the headlines did. Lots that once turned over new truck inventory in 3 to 4 weeks started holding it for 2 months, then 3. The trucks didn't stop arriving from the factory. They just stopped leaving the lot at the same pace. Short sentence. Pause. Then the math broke. Interest rates climbed, incomes didn't, and the stretch that used to buy a few more years of room ran out of runway. Buyers hit a wall where no loan term, however long, could make the payment work, and for the first time in decades, in large numbers, they simply stopped signing. But here's what most people get wrong. The truck industry didn't just raise prices. It restructured its entire business around the assumption that buyers would keep financing their way through any price increase. And that assumption is now the thing breaking the market. Start with the loan data. 36.5% of new vehicle buyers are now on loan terms of 73 months or longer, up from 27.3% just a decade ago. That's more than 1 in 3 buyers, financing a depreciating asset for longer than most people keep their job at a single employer. B-roll note. Bar chart animation, loan term length distribution, 2016 versus 2026. 23.9% are now stretching to 84 months or more. 7 years of payments on a vehicle that, by the time it's paid off, has lost more than half its value. Put another way, on a $55,000 truck, that buyer will pay more in total interest over the life of the loan than most Americans earn in a year of full-time work. Here's the counterintuitive turn. You'd expect an industry facing a buyer revolt to cut prices. It hasn't, because it can't, without destroying the profit structure it built the last 20 years on. Automakers make more money per unit on a loaded half-ton truck than on almost anything else they sell. Discounting that truck by even $5,000 doesn't just cost them margin on one sale, it resets the pricing anchor for every truck sold after it. So instead of lowering prices, manufacturers are doing something quieter, holding sticker prices steady and letting buyers absorb the gap through longer terms, lower down payments, and, increasingly, walking away entirely. B-roll note. Dealership finance office, paperwork on desk, out of focus foreground. That's the trade the industry made. Protect the margin, lose the volume, and the volume is disappearing fast. Full year 2026 new vehicle sales are forecast at 15.8 million units, roughly 1 million fewer than before the pandemic, in a country that has added more than 10 million people to its population since. Meanwhile, more than 75% of American car owners now drive a used vehicle, and among people who bought a car so far in 2026, 76% bought used. That is not a market shrinking from disinterest. That is a market being priced out of its own product by design. Compare that to the used market those buyers are flooding into instead. The average used vehicle now sells for $25,287, roughly half the price of the average new one source. And even that number is out of reach for many households paying outright. Even at half the price, most buyers still need to finance it, this time at used vehicle interest rates north of 11.4%, nearly double the new vehicle rate. The industry didn't just lose the sale, it pushed its own customer into a market where the borrowing costs are worse, and shrugged. B-roll note: 2 window stickers side by side, new truck versus comparable age used truck, price difference highlighted. This resolves what we told you at 0.25. The industry didn't lose its customers. It built a price structure that assumed they'd always find a way to keep paying, and stopped checking whether that was still true. If you felt like the numbers on a new truck stopped making sense somewhere in the last few years, you were right, and you were early. Most people are only now catching up to something you already sensed sitting in that dealership parking lot, doing the math in your head before the salesman finished his pitch. This isn't a story about being priced out of a luxury. A work truck isn't a luxury for the men buying it. It's the tool that earns the income that pays for everything else. When the tool itself requires financing that rivals a mortgage, something upstream of the truck has broken, not something downstream in the buyer's judgment. B-roll note: slow push-in on a work truck bed loaded with tools, golden hour. What most people don't realize is that the truck industry is running the same playbook that broke affordable cars a decade earlier. Footprint regulations rewarding size, tariffs raising the floor, financing absorbing the difference, and running it on the one vehicle category Americans can least afford to walk away from. Except this time, buyers are walking away anyway. That's the piece almost nobody is saying out loud. The industry is betting its entire truck margin on a buyer who is now demonstrably disappearing. Knowing that changes how you read every 0% financing ad and every record incentive headline for the rest of this year. They're not signs of a healthy market recovering. They're signs of an industry trying to restretch a rope that already snapped once. It also changes how you read the trucks themselves. Every added tech package, every new trim tier, every premium badge stapled onto a work vehicle wasn't put there because buyers asked for it. It was put there because it was the only lever left to raise the price without technically raising the base price, margin, disguised as an upgrade. The electrician in Ohio didn't need a 12-speaker sound system or a heated steering wheel to run wire and pull permits. He needed a bed, a hitch, and a payment that didn't outlast the truck's usefulness. Increasingly, the industry stopped building that truck at all. B-roll note: close-up, base model badge on a stripped-down work truck trim contrasted with a loaded luxury trim badge. Which brings us to what happens next. The automakers still betting everything on the high-margin truck are making a wager that American buyers will eventually stretch far enough to meet them. B-roll note: wide shot, dealership lot at dawn, rows of unsold trucks, no people in frame. The buyers walking away from those lots are making a different bet entirely, that the industry will run out of room to stretch before they run out of patience. Only one of those two bets can be right.